So I think it's pretty safe to say that the Steam Frame is one of the most hyped headsets out there. Definitely the most hyped one that I've seen. Online, there's tons and tons of videos talking about little things about the specs and rumors about when it might come out or even the price. And if you look on subreddits like the Valve Deckard subreddit or the Steam Frame subreddit, you'll see people who are very passionate about this thing. Seriously, I think some of them have gone a bit crazy from just waiting. Valve has given us a whole lot to speculate on, going back all the way to 2021 when they put the Deckard codename in the Steam VR code. Probably accidentally, but knowing them, who knows. In the VR landscape, Meta has been pretty much dominating for the past half decade, and that's still the case even now. And of course, we all have our thoughts on Meta, so that's why I think that the Steam Frame's success is needed for VR to continue flourishing. Now, okay, two important things before I continue. First of all, make sure to subscribe, and second of all, VR is not dead. This is not a VR is dead kind of video, nor do I think it will die if the Steam Frame doesn't do well. However, I do think the VR ecosystem has been very badly needing this kind of headset, with these kinds of specs and from this kind of company. Valve has been in the VR space for almost 10 years now, dating all the way back to the HTC Vive when that was a thing, which shout out to you if you ever actually got to own one. Valve has been pouring a lot of money into VR, from their headsets and to the software that powers it. This money and resources is something that VR desperately needs, so the announcement of the Steam Frame is something that everyone should be happy for, since it benefits everyone. Since about 2020 or 2021, there's been a noticeable shift from PC VR headsets like the Valve Index to more standalone headsets like the Quest. And that makes sense, of course. I mean, there's a lot more people who have the Quest headsets and are willing to pay a lot more for games and experiences. Unfortunately, this has kind of led to PC VR being sort of neglected by some big companies, like Meta. All of their big titles like Asgard's Wrath 2, Deadpool VR, or Arkham Shadow are not at all available on PC VR. However, if the Steam Frame were to do really well, then it could lead to more games being ported to PC VR, or maybe even a focus being placed on that platform. There's a lot of examples of games that were released on Quest that were ported to Steam VR eventually that have a lot of issues in terms of graphics and textures because they were primarily made for Quest. If there's VR games that are made primarily for PC VR and can take advantage of high-end graphics cards, then I think that can be a win-win for everyone in the PC VR community. Hopefully we can get more games with the graphical fidelity that games like Stormland or Half-Life Alyx have. Now, on to pricing. If the Steam Frame is less than $100, then I think that alone would make it the third most popular headset on Steam, behind the Quest 2 and the Quest 3, which have high usage rates. My guess for the Steam Frame price would be $699 for the 256GB model and $799 for the 1TB model, which would put it around $200 more than the Quest 3. I also don't think it will be subsidized very much, kinda like how they've said for the Steam Machine. Now, if we're looking in the future, the Quest 4 is leaked to not be subsidized, as Meta's own internal memos say that they'll be putting premium prices on their future headsets. So there could be a chance where the next Quest headset could be around the same price as the Steam Frame. For the general consumer, I think the price is what will make or break the headset's purchase for them. Of course, the average VR consumer will be more than happy to try out something from Valve, but the average Joe will definitely not have an interest in buying it if it's, say, $800. If it is $650 or $699, whatever the price, I think that would actually be a great value, since it comes with a 6GHz wireless adapter that allows for flawless PC VR streaming, and you can't deny that the head strap looks nice and comfortable. And no more of that weird VR hair that you experience with the Quest. That part has nothing to do with the price, I just kinda want to point it out. Anyways, for $500, the Quest 3 comes with a very flimsy head strap that isn't very comfortable for long uses, and PC VR streaming through something like AirLink is very heavily dependent on your internet strength or quality. Now, of course, the biggest thing that the Quest 3 has over the Steam Frame is that it has color pass-through, while the Steam Frame only has monochrome. Of course, this depends on whether you care about it or not, but it is important to mention. Now, let's talk about Valve themselves and why they're so important to the VR ecosystem. With all of their devices, like the Steam Deck or the Valve Index or even the hideous Steam controller, they're always pushing boundaries and setting the status quo. The release of the Steam Deck brought a flurry of PC gaming handhelds to the market because there was clearly an audience that wanted those kinds of devices. The fact that it had touchpads on it was also a unique thing that made it stand out. With the Steam Frame, we're seeing a lot of features that aren't really commonplace in VR headsets, or at least the most popular headsets. For example, eye tracking, foveated rendering, and an open ecosystem. Some of these things we might see in more higher end headsets like the Big Screen Beyond 2E, but having these in a sub $1,000 headset without having to increase the prices is insane, but very much welcome. These kinds of features are definitely going to be defining future VR headsets and VR experiences, as they'll be trying to replicate and improve upon these. For example, I think foveated rendering is a godsend and very important for VR performance, especially with lower end PCs. Valve's involvement in the VR scene with Steam VR or the HTC Vive or the Valve Index, or even now with the Steam Frame, is indicative of how they're always going to be pushing the bar for what's possible with VR. So I think you and I, the average VR enthusiast and the average consumer, will both be very interested in what's coming from Valve. Now, one of the biggest pains for VR is how much friction there is to actually get into a game or into a social experience. First you have to put the headset on, then turn it on, and then navigate whatever clunky UI is currently there. For more people to consistently play VR, I think there needs to be a lot less friction wherever possible. On the Quest, if you're using something like AirLink or the Link cable to go into PC VR, then I hope you agree with me when I say that it's as much fun of an experience as banging your head against the wall. Somehow, they always find a way to mess it up, despite the fact that they're a $1.8 trillion company, but that's neither here nor there. For using PC VR on the Steam Frame, all you would need to do is just boot up the game. As long as you have the adapter connected to the PC, of course. There's no additional accessories that you need to buy after the purchase to play these PC VR games. Like, for instance, a certain $80 USB-C cable that works sometimes and doesn't work other times. In terms of games, there's a huge PC VR library already available, with a lot of beautiful and high quality experiences. If you haven't finished Half-Life Alyx yet, then this is your reminder that you definitely need to. To be fair, I haven't either, but now that I have the Big Screen Beyond 2, I definitely will. And there's a lot of PC VR mods available that turn 2D experiences into VR ones. For example, there's this Half-Life 1 VR mod that I'm playing right now that I'll link in the description. It's a very fun experience going through Half-Life in VR, but it's very buggy and not very polished at all, to be honest. Breath of the Wild's Better VR by Chromentif is a great example of a mod that has a lot of love put into it and well executed. Being able to pick up the headset and just jump into these games is incredible, and it's something that a lot of people will be looking forward to, myself included. Add to that you can play any Steam VR game on it, and I'm sure with the processor inside of it, it'll lead to a lot of good performance in games. I think it should be hopefully safe to say that the Steam Frame is the most unified VR headset since the Valve Index. Playing a flat screen game, playing a native VR game, and playing a PC VR game streamed is all now possible with just a click of a button. Now the final thing, since I can tell you're getting kind of impatient, is that Valve has a lot of trust in the VR community, partly due to their track record. I mean, of course they do, they made the Steam VR software, which is amazing. The Valve Index was also very highly regarded, as was the HTC Vive. I mean, I know for sure they're getting a lot of brownie points in the community for using an Arch-based OS. The fact that there's such an openness to it where you can have root access or be able to install any app that you want is something that is sorely needed in VR, where you have companies like Meta who make it really hard to install APKs to your Quest without feeling like you're defusing a bomb. If you'd like to feel like you actually own your headset, then the Steam Frame is definitely it. And that's all thanks to Valve. Alright, to wrap this whole video up and to make sure you remember what I said for the past 8 minutes, I'll say this. VR needs the Steam Frame because the Steam Frame is what we all want from a VR headset. The ease of use, the comfort, the openness, the feeling that Valve is actually going to be here for the long haul, unlike some other companies, maybe, is what is sorely needed in the VR scene and is a breath of fresh air from the likes of Meta or other companies. Overall, I'm very much looking forward to the Steam Frame. I just hope it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. Hopefully the release of the Steam Frame will force the industry to try harder to get out our wallets. Anyways, if you're looking forward to the Steam Frame, then let me know in the comments, and let me know your thoughts on this video. And make sure to subscribe, or the world will end by the time that the video's over. If I were you, I wouldn't want that guilt on my hands, so I would just do it. Anyways, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and take care.